Hey everybody, on today's Bosman at Home, it's time to reckon with the PS4K. Welcome to the show. I am Kyle Bosman, and this is my home. Cracked on my own last name. It's a casual show. Last week, I had the misfortune of reacting on the spot to almost certain details about the PlayStation 4K. If this is your first time hearing about the PlayStation 4K, it's real. It's going to be a new box that's $400 to $500. It is going to improve on the graphical processing power of the PlayStation 4, as well as allow for 4K media to be put on your television. Lots of those things. It's not been confirmed by Sony. It has not been unofficially hinted at by anyone at Sony. However, we're at this point now where we have to accept that it is coming, and we have to make our peace with it. We have to reckon with the PS4K. And the weird thing about it is we don't know how to react, because this has never happened before. We can't peel open our old EGMs and say, how did the ancients react to this? It didn't happen. Nothing like this has ever happened before. And so in order to react responsibly to this news, to the PS4K, I thought it'd be a good idea to look at some historical moments that are close to this, not quite this, but close enough that maybe we can divulge some wisdom from each of these files. File 1, the black Game Boy Color carts. So this was the cart hierarchy when the Game Boy Color launched. Gray carts. Those are Game Boy carts. They're not going to be in full color on your Game Boy Color. They'll have some weird colors. Just hit left and B when you're starting up the console and it'll look great. Then there were the see-through, the translucent carts. These are Game Boy Color only. Don't try to shove that in your old Game Boy. It will not work. These are using the full capabilities of the Game Boy Color. 32-bit system, baby. And so then the black carts. And the black carts worked in Game Boys. They worked in Game Boy Colors. On Game Boy Color, you would have that same old Game Boy game, but with color. It was simple. And so really, for a long time, most developers just made black carts. It was not a good idea to make the translucent carts, because people who bought Game Boy Colors don't care. They're just buying the black carts because they have color anyway. Eventually, more Game Boy Color only carts came out. Case in point, Pokemon Gold and Silver were essentially black carts, and then Crystal was Game Boy Color only. So eventually it took off. Lesson learned: nobody's mad if we're playing the same games. File 2, Sega CD and the 32X. So this is the nightmare scenario. These are the worst. Sega CD and 32X, both of these things were just machines you slammed into your Genesis. They were limited in their library. There were very few games that supported them, and in this case it's not like the black carts. It's not like you could put your Genesis games into the 32X and they would suddenly be better. No, you needed 32X games. In fact, there were 32X ports of Genesis games. There were Sega CD ports of Genesis games. It was all a big mess. The 32X came out a year before the Saturn. Saturn was already out in Japan. It's like, here's this, America. This stuff bums me out. Lesson learned: Sega of America was out of their mind. File 3, the Nintendo 64 expansion pack. The expansion pack, with no C, is a very unique item in the world of video games. Essentially what you do is you take your N64, you flip open this little compartment, take out the thing that was there, and slam in this tiny black and red box, just chunk it right in, and now your N64 has double the RAM. All the way up to 8 megabytes, baby. That is very crazy. Essentially, people would go, they would buy the same N64 game, but people with the expansion pack would have better resolution, better frame rates, and sometimes better textures. And this thing was $50 US. Imagine if the PS4K would be $50 US. No one would be complaining. That's all right. There were only 2 games to ever require the expansion pack. Perfect Dark kind of did. And Donkey Kong 64, which came out a year after the expansion pack, came with the expansion pack. So it was just, to me, I think a pretty cool item, well implemented, eased in. Lesson learned, $50? That ain't bad. File 4, the new Nintendo 3DS. So this thing is essentially a PS4K. There's a baby crying right now. It's so sad about the new 3DS. I understand, baby. neighbor baby. Basically, new 3DS, casual show. New 3DS, yeah, it's like, it's not a new console. It's a revision of the 3DS. It, yeah, boosts performance. The 3D is slightly better. Things like that. But the idea is, much like the PS4K, you can buy the same carts. You can buy a 3DS cart and put it in your new 3DS. And for some newer games, it'll run better. Hyrule Warriors Legends. There'll be more enemies on the screen if you have the new 3DS. If you have the old 3DS, it's a little sewage game. And so yeah, I get that the differentiating factor here between this and the PS4K is that this is a handheld device, right? There's like no harm done. This thing costs a lot less money. I get that. I get that we're used to it, I guess, because of the old Game Boy Color black carts. We're used to this kind of thing with handhelds. The difference here is that if I bought Link's Awakening DX and played that on my old Game Boy, I'm not losing out on anything other than color. If I buy Hyrule Warriors Legends and play that on an old 3DS, I'm getting a worse game. And that is kind of unacceptable. Lesson learned, it's possible that the older platform will become neglected. File number 5, PC, in parentheses all time. The problem we're seeing with the PS4K is that people are saying, so wait, my games will run better if I spend more money and worse if I spend less money? And people who regularly play games on PC are saying, yeah, because that's how it's worked on PC for decades now. And yeah, I mean, that's how it works everywhere. I think outside of the world of video games, the idea of a video game console outdating itself within 3 years doesn't seem that weird. I think we've had it pretty good in the world of video games. And I guess just now we're at this point where the world has moved to be so iterative, everything outside of video games in the tech world, that now it's probably just time for video games to have to catch up. Lesson learned, even though it makes me incredibly uneasy to accept this, I think that Sony is making the right business decision with the PS4K. Because, like, two things. First, Sony does have a lot of reasons to invest in 4K as a corporation. They don't just make TVs, they also make cameras and camera lenses and television shows and movies and VR and Walkmans. They make a lot of things. 4K benefits a lot of Sony. So for it to push 4K on its very successful product, the PlayStation 4, I get it. Secondly, I mean, coming into this generation, coming off the 7th generation where the Wii swept up, both Sony and Microsoft made purposefully cheaper, less powerful machines. Maybe that made sense to them at the time. I think now both of them are regretting it. We're at the situation where if I can afford a PS4K when it comes out, I will buy one. If I can't, I won't. And when I play God of War 4, my game will run worse than the PS4K version. When I play Street Fighter 5, my characters will still have weird mesh shadows on their faces that don't make any sense. However, that was going to happen anyway. I think regardless of the PS4K, my PS4 games were still going to look like that. The PS4 is not a powerhouse. It never has been. It has performed better than the Xbox One, and so I think when we compared the two, we're like, oh, PS4, pretty good. But when compared against like a PC, it still isn't there. It still doesn't perform like a PC should, like a console should, frankly. And so I do think that the PS4K, how do I put this nicely, is an acceptable solution to a problem that shouldn't have existed. Right, we talk about all these firsts, all these like unprecedented events. The PlayStation 4, I think, comparatively, amongst everything out there, may be like the weakest PlayStation, at its launch. And I think now we're paying the price for that. I think that a year from now, we're going to look at the PS4 like it's old. And that is a bummer. That bums me out. But something positive, Ratchet & Clank is coming out next week. That's the show. Hey, I almost forgot, 2 weeks in a row. Looks like I remembered just in the last minute. I want to take one moment to promote Easy Allies. If you don't know what Easy Allies is, it is a group, it is a team, it is a bunch of former Game Trailers people, myself included, coming together to continue to make videos about video games, to keep making reviews and live streams, podcasts, tabletop escapades, things, videos, and they're good. We're doing good stuff. We're doing good work. So please, if you would, check out patreon.com/easyallies to see what we're up to. Thank you for letting me be promotional. If you're on Twitter, you can find me at Kyle Bosman. I'll be back again. Hope to see you then. Thanks for watching. Hi everyone. I assume if you are still watching this video, it means that you still don't understand what the PS4K means. And that's okay, that's understandable, I'm here to help. So I think the easiest way to communicate this is, of course, through anime. So imagine anime, okay? Imagine the PlayStation 4 is like a very confident, powerful woman type, right? She crosses her arms, she doesn't smirk or anything. The Xbox One is basically Vegeta. And so they battle all the time. And the Xbox One is always like, someday I'll be more powerful than you. But then one day you just hear, yo, and the camera spins around and it's the Nintendo NX. And he's just a buff dude, but does cool stuff with his hands. Back to the Xbox One. He's like, oh, the Wii U. And the NX is like, no, I'm the NX now. I've been training. I'm stronger now than ever. And the Xbox One puts on a scouter and checks it. He's like, oh, he's not bluffing. He is the strongest console now. But why is the PS4 acting all cool? PS4 not affected. Back to the NX, just like, yeah, I've learned from my mistakes. And now I am back to reclaim my crown as the strongest console. And then there's a phone ring. It's like beep, 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 beep. It's like, hold on a second. Picks up the phone, and then there's like on the other end, like a cat creature named NeoGaf. And it's like, NX, buddy, yeah, it's an emergency. And NX is like, not now, NeoGaf. I'm just about to beat the PlayStation 4. And NeoGaf is like, but that's the thing. That's not the PlayStation 4's final form. And back to NX, he's like, what? Not her final form. Then just poof, poof, anime eyes. Poof, what is she planning? Poof, what's going on? Back to the mouth agape. To be continued. That is where we're at right now. I hope that helps you understand. I get that this is confusing stuff. I'm here to help.